Well, one of Australia's richest men, Andrew Forrest, has attempted to broker one of the country's biggest mining deals. The deal would give his company, Fortescue Metals Group, access to a sizable piece of land in Australia's mineral-rich northwest.
But so far, Mr Forrest hasn't been able to reach agreement with Michael Woodley. He's an elder of the Yindjibarndi people who effectively hold native title rights to the land in question. Tonight, Four Corners looks at what's gone wrong. Let's hear a taste from both key players.
We've suffered for so long, and the only way to get out of poverty, the only way to fix up some of our social problems is to insist that these companies pay a fair deal.
Before the Native Title Act existed, there were very few, if any, contributions. The Native Title Act has come in, and there are now contributions everywhere. That's great. Where Fortescue stands is, because I've been in this country, unlike so many other executives, they might swing their way in from London or wherever. I've grown up in this country. I've seen how wonderful these people are and how they can slowly be strangled at the hands of welfare.
Andrew Forrest and Michael Woodley there, locked in a dispute over use of land in northwestern Australia. And for more, Kerry O'Brien is the presenter of Four Corners and he joins us now from Sydney. Good morning.
Anne, how are you?
Well, thanks. But it seems to be a case of two men saying they have the community's best interests at heart. Now, I believe you've spoken to Andrew Forrest. Just what is he proposing for the Indigenous community?
Well, the situation is that we're talking about 13,000 square kilometres of Yindjibarndi land in the Pilbara. Part of that land has already been granted native title and the Yindjibarndi have proved their continuous connection to the land. Another part, and this is the part in question, where Andrew Forrest wants to mine massive deposits of iron ore, the Solomon Hub mine, is under claim and still being processed. And there has to be a negotiation take place. That's taken place over 4 years. In fact, it can be much shorter than that. The real issue of this story, Anne, is that native title has been operating now for nearly 20 years. And what it's throwing up is quite a range of very inconsistent outcomes. The miners, like Andrew Forrest, are required to negotiate in this instance, but after a period of 6 months or so of what can be deemed to be reasonable negotiation, in truth the miners can go ahead once they get the nod from the Minister and get their mining lease approved and signed off by the Native Title Tribunal. In this instance, the negotiations have gone on for 4 years. Michael Woodley, on behalf of the Yindjibarndi, eventually walked away from the deal, and now a group from within that original negotiating party has broken away. They want to do a deal. Andrew Forrest, who on the one hand has established an employment covenant across Australia quite separate to what we're talking about here, where he is the driving force behind a goal of establishing 50,000 jobs for Aborigines around Australia across a range of industries. On the other hand, in dealing with the Yindjibarndi, is taking a quite tough approach, and he says he does that because he doesn't want to see mining welfare. On the other hand, Michael Woodley, on behalf of the Yindjibarndi Aboriginal Corporation, says we can walk and chew gum. We have established that we can look after our own affairs. We have the right to negotiate a reasonable return for this vast amount of ore being taken from this land. We should be able to control our own destiny. So that is the hub of the story.
But what does Andrew Forrest then say when he's given that counter-argument there from Michael Woodley?
Well, he won't budge on the fact that he's not prepared to offer a royalty in the same way as some of the other big miners. For instance, Rio has done a deal recently based on, I think, 0.05%, and that royalty moves with the value of the iron ore that's extracted. What Andrew Forrest does in his native title negotiations, and he's done others before this one, is to cap the amount, and in this instance it's a cap at $4 million a year, plus another 6.5 or up to another 6.5 in jobs and training and potential housing. But he says if he goes any higher than that, he's actually not doing Aborigines a service, that it becomes mining welfare and gets squandered. Michael Woodley says that's paternalism.
And of course, Michael Woodley wants it to be uncapped. Is that perhaps because, looking into the future, I mean, there are potentially hundreds of hundreds of billions of dollars worth of minerals in the ground that could be tapped into.
Fortescue Metals are talking about taking out something like 60 million tonnes of iron ore per year. That is currently being sold at, I think, $1.70 a tonne. Andrew Forrest says the real value as it leaves the port is $120. But even at $120 a tonne, that values the estimated deposits in the Solomon Hub at something like $280 billion on current values. And Andrew Forrest says, well, the deal I'm offering would give the Yindjibarndi people something like $400 million over the life of the mine, which is 40 years. But that's 400 million against 280 billion. It's a complicated story, and there are arguments on both sides here. But the fascination, I think there are two aspects. One, the story of Andrew Forrest himself and his record with Aboriginal people versus this deal. And secondly, the whole issue of native title and whether the outcomes that are being negotiated are what the writers of the legislation had intended in the first place. And
there's a real risk that the Yindjibarndi Aboriginal Corporation could miss out altogether if they don't have some agreement. What's happening with the rival group that's trying to intercept there?
Well, the second group, which is the Wurrumara Yindjibarndi Aboriginal Corporation, have essentially agreed to a deal with Andrew Forrest. What now needs to be resolved is what the legal status of that deal is, what the legal status of one group is over the other group. There are legal proceedings to endeavour to resolve that one way or the other. But the bottom line is that it's a rather unseemly process. The community itself has been divided. It's become a very acrimonious situation. The locals there say that it will be a very, very long time before those divisions are healed. And the outcome right at this moment, you'd have to say, is a big question mark.
Kerry O'Brien, thanks very much, and we'll look forward to Four Corners tonight.
Thanks, Anne.